evening.
Good evening. Welcome to the April 12th, 2022 meeting of the East Bridgewater Finance Committee. We're here tonight to finalize the fiscal year 2023 budget with just a couple changes from what was originally recommended. So we will open the meeting up. We have that, and then we also have a couple reserve transfer requests from the Finance Committee Reserve Fund that we will talk through and vote upon. So, when we finished our meeting last Monday, I think it was, we had gone through and asked for recommendations from each department for, or each recommendations on any adjustments to be made to the operating budget as submitted for fiscal year 23. We talked through many of those. There were some things that have come up that we need to go back to tonight. One of which was the Board of Health's request for the increase in the line item for the nurse, the town nurse. We can update on that. The second, we asked everyone to make recommendations if there are any budgets for which you were the liaison to. If there are any recommended adjustments, Lucia did have one on the town clerks that we can talk through. The other one that we want to talk through tonight is the building, planning, zoning department budget, and some recommended changes to that. Anything else that anyone wants to talk through tonight?
Those are basically the changes that we talked about. You know, at some point, I just do want to reiterate that where this revenue's coming from and what the town's doing and how we're trying to kind of, I guess I'll call it, re-steer the ship. That,
Yes.
you know, that the approach next year is going to be very, very important, or else we'll be going down a very bad path. And we have the ability to do this year only because that plan has been developed and is hopefully going to be working out. And because of what we had for free cash and the due diligence that was done in the fall, putting money away to, you know, fund the budget so we could potentially make this shift. So, you know, I just want to make sure that people are clear that in an effort to support this budget and get to where we need to be, with a lot of the requests that have been made, not only in the operating budget, but in the capital budget, it's just going to be very important that we look at the way we budget next year and get an early start on it to do it.
Correct. Yeah, as we talked about in the last couple of meetings, I mean, this year has been a year of obvious transition. We have a new town administrator, a new town accountant. We still have an interim town treasurer collector. We've had some departures from the Finance Committee that served in the leadership roles in the past. So a lot of us that are new to the entirety of the process, I guess we could say. And I agree. So getting a head start next year is critical and needed. So maybe, I guess, let's just talk before we get into the generalities. We do have our town administrator, Charlie Seelig, here tonight, and town accountant, Melanie Dean, in addition to the members that are present. So when we asked the town departments for a level service and a real needs budget, many of and I think we talked about this in the last meeting, several of our larger departments had some requests for increase in personnel. We also had, the school department was in negotiations with the East Bridgewater Education Association, and luckily was able to come to terms with them, which is a good thing, so that we know where we stand with that before we go into the next fiscal year. So based on the negotiations, that bumped up their initial salary projections, so we had some increase there. We had increases in personnel from the police department, the fire department, and the DPW. Police and fire based on, police in particular based on the number of calls that they're being called out to and dispatched to. Fire much due to the callbacks and the overtime, so they were able to fund a lot of that through reductions in other line items. And then DPW with strategic hires put in place for retirements that they're anticipating, in particular in the fleet maintenance division, which does do a lot of work on all town vehicles and save a lot of money in the long run. So that's high level where we're at. With that, we did come in with a, I don't have the right thing up in front of me.
Plus that with the adjustment in the Chapter 70 money, right? With schools helped us get to where we needed to be with the school department.
The schools did have an increase in the Chapter 70 money because of the increase in the free and reduced lunch that were, yes. So, and that increased their Chapter 70 money by just over $1 million. So, with the real needs budgets, we came in with a budget shortfall by the time we were done after the adjustments. Melanie, I was just trying to find the exact document that you had sent to me. I apologize, running in here so late.
Which number did you have,
The
Bottom line.
The bottom, yeah.
After considering real needs.
for real?
what we were short.
I have all my numbers plugged in now. Without using free cash?
Correct.
All the other funding sources? We were 1.3.
1.3. So there was discussion that happened that historically, we've ended each of the previous fiscal years with a large sum of free cash, which has historically been the practice in the town. There have been some conversations. We also, to what Dave mentioned earlier, put $1.1 million, or a little over that, into an operational stabilization fund at the fall special town meeting, in anticipation that we would need to use that over the future to fund future budgets. And we had some discussion that when we have departments that have, made good cases to us regarding staff shortages, the stresses from COVID, the increased number of calls, the potential expansion that they're anticipating to happen throughout town with the Route 18 corridor project and other development projects. How could we fund these things? And so we talked through that while it's not a proper long-term solution to level fund the budget through the use of free cash, that in this fiscal year, because we had the money put away in the operational stabilization fund that could be used, typically we use free cash for the capital needs, because we put that money away ahead of time, that money could be used to fund capital. We could use free cash in this year, knowing that we have a pattern of this free cash. So it's not that we're funding the operational budget through a one-time windfall. It's something that's historically been proven to occur. Setting the expectation that spending cannot continue on this pace with the departments, and that it has to be a gradual reduction in the expenses to revenues, which we've had conversations and the agreement of Charlie, the town administrator. I met with Charlie and Dave Sheedy from the selectmen last Friday. The selectmen were in agreement, or Dave, speaking for them, was in agreement as to this approach. So that's hopefully a general synopsis.
Right, and one of the tools that we should have, and I think I asked for it last week, was the sources of free cash. What got certified? Where did it come from? we'd like to get that so we can have an understanding where that came from.
Anyone have anything else that they want to add?
So Melanie, at this point, based on what we were just talking about, you've got a $1.3 million deficit,
Yeah.
exclusive of any free cash application.
Yeah.
What is the unencumbered amount of free cash?
Before that deficit
Yes.
is, and taking into consideration there's one article, for 15,000 on the warrant, is 1,421,342.
So that leaves just over $100,000.
The 1.3 is actually 1.38, so it leaves
Okay.
about 35,000.
35,000.
Do you know the balance in our stabilization account right now?
I don't know why I don't put this in an easier place. Did you two write them down when I gave them to you the other day?
No.
Give me a
And
minute.
if I did, I don't have that piece of paper in front of me, I'm sorry. I have a number in my head, but I don't want to say it.
Yeah,
In
just
case
give me
it's
one
not
second, I
correct.
know where I can find it. It's just a little slow. Want general or capital or both?
I'm
You want
both.
general?
Sorry,
Well,
both.
actually, both would be good.
So general is 3,727,000 and capital is 4,692,000.
So based off of what's being paid out of the capital stabilization fund for bonding, how many years of funding is that, do you know?
So this was something we were gonna look at because that 5 years of bonding isn't what it was never 5 full years of bonding, it's certain payments. And I believe since we haven't bonded, I think we're still on that track, but I need to look further into it. I found one of George's old spreadsheets that hopefully can tell me which pieces it's supposed to be, but I don't know what the logic behind what was considered part of the 5 years and what wasn't, so I need to see if I can basically read his mind on where that concept came from.
Yeah.
Because
And I
we
mean,
pay
what we-
about $3 million, over $3 million a year in debt service, so,
Yep, we know when the audit happened earlier this year, that it was, I'm sorry, the last time that we had bonding done, that it was fine, and we haven't bonded in the last 2 fiscal years.
right.
And we haven't reduced that fund, so in theory, it should be right where it's supposed to be.
Right,
Or
last time I
lower.
looked, it was 7 years or 8 years.
I think it was actually a
Of
little
certain
overfunded.
debt
but-
payments, and that's what I wanna get a better handle on, and what those certain debt payments are, and why
Right.
we chose those ones to be part of our 5 years of payments and not other ones.
So 3.7 in the general, just shy of 4.7 in the capital.
Yeah.
So that's what, roughly 6% of the budget that's in stabilization? What's up? The overall budget, like 53 million?
It's 50.
54 or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's about 6%.
Little, oh, of the general, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, the general, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, about 7%.
All right, let's get to business.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion?
You're very quiet tonight.
Still early.
You good?
Yeah, well,
Okay, all right. Okay, so let's start with the smaller ones or easy ones. So Lucia, you had made a recommendation to reduce the stipend that the town clerk had requested from 2,000 to 1,000.
Yes.
Okay. Any discussion? That was for the public records.
Was it
I thought they were eliminating it, it was 1,000.
nothing?
I'm sorry?
Wasn't it 1,000 to nothing?
Or did you guys change it?
I thought it was 1,000 to nothing.
Oh, originally, last I knew it was 2, but did you go take it?
I didn't think that we reduced it last week. I thought we said we were gonna,
Last I knew it was 2.
I'm sorry. No, we did reduce it from
You
2 to
did.
1 last week. You guys are correct. So that one's already done. It was the Board of Health that we tabled from last week. So that request was to increase the nurses' budget in anticipation that there would be an increase in COVID-related cases coming up, and that would then potentially increase overtime if there was contract tracing re-implemented and things like that. Crystal, who's not able to be here tonight, is the liaison for the Board of Health and talked with them. They had applied for a grant consortium that they talked about, I think, last week, that's being coordinated through the Board of Health in Halifax, that they were awarded to be part of it. They don't know all the details yet of it. So last Friday when I was here, I did have a quick conversation with Sue Malloy for the department. While they necessarily don't need to have that second position, they were looking for a little cushion, I think, in the budget. My suggestion to her was that we have a finance committee reserve fund for a reason. We don't know if there's gonna be a surge in COVID. We don't know if there's gonna be contact tracing. That's what the reserve fund's for, should they need to come to us and ask for an overage. I don't know what the committee's thoughts are on that, though.
I would agree with that approach.
Agree with that also.
Okay.
Can I just go back to the first question for just a second?
Sorry, yes.
So.
In the Board of Health or the town clerk?
Town clerk.
Okay.
So, it was originally, I thought it was a $1,000 stipend for the records compliance. Was it, in fact, I'm misremembering, it was 2?
Yes, I believe it was 2 originally.
I just am looking.
So
I think it's line 161, 510, 5194. $2,000.
Town clerk here, VRIS, okay, it was 2. For the VRIS officer stipend. And that was added as new for this year.
So we've been going all these years without that stipend. Somebody goes and reviews a budget and looks at it and sees that another town has it, so we should have it. I mean, stipends, I'm just gonna be honest, drive me crazy, all right? Should it not end up just being buried in the salary and look at what it's really gonna be?
Part of the
So-
contract negotiation.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
If it's for the town clerk, there's nothing.
There's no contract.
Right, it's an elected position.
so that could be just submitted in the budget as part of the payroll thing. I just,
And there is a 2.39% increase already in the budget for that position.
so I could just tell you right now, I know it's a touchy area, I don't support it at all,
Okay.
being thrown into the budget.
No, I'm good, that's fine, I'll
Okay.
go with that, I'll go with that. I know that a lot of towns do have it, it's not 1 or 2 towns, there are many towns that have it because the records requests have skyrocketed. But I did recommend it going from 2 to 1 for the reason being that a lot of the records requests can come through for planning, zoning, police, fire, and I'm assuming that those get transferred over to those departments, that there is a records access person for each department. So that's why I dropped it down, but if you recommend scrapping it, then,
Well, we do know I know there's one for the schools, I believe we talked about
I think
one.
there's 5.
There's 5,
And
okay.
one is the clerk, I know that, I think probably one in police, one in schools, I don't know if fire is one, I'd have to look at the list.
Okay, so there are 5, and none of the others are getting a stipend either, I guess that's another way to look at it.
oh, really, okay.
Yeah.
So, okay, all right.
So,
From a fairness perspective.
really, so, and I don't wanna be a son of a gun about it, we're not talking a ton of money, but it's just a path we go down that opens up the door for many other things. In reality, you know, if you run for the position, you see what it is, I would say we should just be included in the justification for the general salary, if that's what you wanna do, so, that's just my thoughts.
Do you want to make a motion to reduce that line item by 2,000?
Yep, I would make a motion to reduce that line item by $2,000.
Second.
Okay,
So we have a motion by Dave, second by Kevin, to reduce count number 1161510519 stipend VRIS officer by $2,000. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, next up is building, planning, zoning, wiring.
We didn't have to take anything out of, we're just leaving health alone.
Oh, I'm sorry, let me go back. Yes, sorry. Board of Health. I wish I had this on Excel.
Fashion paper.
Or, I so ran out of time before
No,
I
I
ran out
know.
of work today. See if I can pull this up easier. All right. We can go back to that because we have the paper for, while this loads, we'll do.
Sure.
And then we'll go back to Board of Health. So, in the initial level funded budget, I'm sorry, real needs budget that was submitted, there were some changes to the salary structure within the department and moving funds from, you can see here on the, if you look on page 1, the 2022, if you look under building and inspection, there was an administrative position that was funded at 54,000. That was then requested for fiscal year 23 to be moved to 75,000. And then there was a reduction on page, so there was that one.
It's planning board administrative support, 175,510, the next page. Planning
Yeah, so
board went
this
to 0 from
65 to 0, and then the clerical salaries went from 0 to 44
Yep.
in the line right below it.
Yep.
This is, Charlie, do you maybe want to come up and talk to what, I don't want to say anything.
So, well, I think there was some confusion or some planning that was done, not necessarily in coordination with the board of selectmen, in that Patrick had proposed having an office manager at a higher, new job description, new job rate, everything like that. That really hadn't been vetted by the board of selectmen, and what the board and myself and Dave had talked to Patrick earlier this week and said, we have the Collins Center study going on, so the classification compensation plan. Rather than make piecemeal changes, this office, let's wait until we get results back. And then we'll see what we want to do or not do in the various departments. based on the job descriptions, based on the market rate data the Collins Center collects and everything like that. So, and I think Melly can confirm this, we have one part-time position that was funded in planning.
And,
It's
and zoning, yep.
Right, and it's gonna be just a zoning
Yep.
at $7,000. So that person's simply moving from one budget to the other. The other two positions will remain as is for now. If we come to a fall town meeting, and at that time, the town wants to approve changes, then we can do that. But we're not funding an upgraded position at this time.
When is that study supposed to be complete, any idea?
Well, in fact, I had corresponded with them earlier this week. They're still working on it. I should get some preliminary results after town meeting.
So to this point, there has been no shift in any of those salaries there, so that no one is,
They should be getting, either if they're in the union, they'll, when we finish union
Sure.
negotiations, they'll get a pay,
Right.
unless they're moving from step to step.
right, but
obviously.
there was never a movement to this
No.
point to, okay. that's-
Right. So this basically just reverts those two, or those three, I'll say two, the clerical position and the administrative assistant position back to,
So the bottom line is that 288 goes to 268.
goes to 268. And Charlie, you met with Patrick, right?
Yes, David and I met with Patrick earlier this week. The only day it would have been yesterday, so yesterday we met with him.
So I'd make a motion to accept and incorporate the updated building, planning, zoning budget in total amount 268,106.06 into our overall number.
Second.
Okay, yes.
268, 108,
106.06,
The total,
total
Yeah.
updated, right? To the
total updated, yep,
rightmost column. Yes.
correct,
As printed.
as printed.
probably what I sent over, so I probably
Yeah,
have it.
it's the one you sent over.
Not open.
Any discussion?
No,
Yeah,
I
we've
think
had-
that's a very wise approach, considering all the potential changes that could be coming.
Yep, I agree. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. And I'm still trying to pull this up.
Pressure's on.
I know.
Did you go back to Board of Health yet?
I'm trying to pull it up here.
That's okay, I just wasn't sure.
I have this in a PDF, so here we go. Oh, for Christ's sake.
Back on page 1. 139.
Do you have it in front of you, Melanie, by chance?
I have
Like what, just to tell me the page so I can get there quicker?
mine's in Excel.
It drives me nuts that it's not in alphabetical order.
Can you control F for Board of
I'm,
Health?
but I'm on a iPad. I don't know if I can search the board registrars.
Try page 87.
Page 87?
Yep.
Thank you. Okay. So we had the public health nurse. The request was fiscal year budget 22 was $11,832.50. The fiscal year 2023 department request was $29,400.
Real need?
That's the real need. But that goes with what we talked about with, at first it was around adding a second nurse. Then it was, they got the grant that's in Halifax that they're not sure exactly what's gonna fund,
So-
so there'll be some money coming from there.
What was that number, 29,400?
400. And then, so it was a netting, they had requested an increase in that line item of 17,567.50. But then we just discussed with the approach that if they need money because there's an uptick in COVID, that's what we have the finance reserve account for.
Okay, so I'd make the motion that the, within the Department of Public Health nurse line item be reduced by $15,000. The understanding, is that right?
Should be reduced by 17,567.50.
Okay, I thought 17,567.50.
67.50.
Okay. So the line on public health nurse be reduced by a total of 17,567.50, with the understanding that if those, the items or the needs that were included in that amount that it was originally budgeted, the board can come to the finance committee for reserve transfer.
Okay, we have a
Second.
motion.
Along
Second
with the
by,
motion.
second by Dave. Any discussion?
Agree.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes. Okay. So we've talked about those. Any other general discussion on fiscal '23 budget? Okay. All right, we have two reserve requests in front of us. The first one I had emailed out maybe a couple weeks ago, I apologize. The amount is from the fire department, from the chief. It's requesting $18,000 be transferred to the supplies ambulance account. The present balance in the account's in a deficit by just over 11,000. The rationale, it's increased cost of supplies for the ambulance operation of 7,000 of which was for COVID-19 and hasn't been reimbursed by Plymouth County CARES Act. So this will eventually come back. It's a timing issue from the reimbursement from the county. And an increased cost for billing due to increase in revenue. So, I mean, that's always a good thing, but hopefully they'll collect some of that soon. So requesting $18,000 to be funded from the Finance Reserve Committee.
Make a motion to accept that?
Second one.
Request. Motion by Dave, second by Kevin. Any discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, I'll just pass everything around to sign when we're done, so we don't. The second request here, we have a request of $4,320 to be transferred to Precise Engineering for cleanup costs. This is, the amount will be used to pay the annual DEP compliance fee for the property. It's the first time the DEP has charged the fee to the town, and the town did not receive prior notice in time to include it in the fiscal year 2022 budget. And Charlie, this is the property on West Union Street? Okay.
Yeah, we'll need to include it someplace in the fiscal '23 budget, because obviously this fee is for fiscal '22. And we'll pay it now, as long as you approve the reserve fund transfer. But, no, I don't, it's not in the selectmen's budget, it's not in John's budget as far as I know. Those are the two, so I'll have to, I'm still talking with John as to where we would ask for the $4,000 for next year, since I assume we'll have to pay it again in April '23.
Well, if we just finished budget tonight,
I know,
we'll,
Might have to do it in the fall.
yeah.
yeah, okay, all right.
Move transfer of $4,320 from the Finance Committee Reserve Fund to pay the cost of the DEP compliance assurance fee as presented.
Okay, and a second?
I want you to get in the action
I'm
here.
gonna move over. I
Second.
feel like I'm I second the last time, you didn't hear me.
Oh, we didn't, I'm sorry. Second by Lucia. Any discussion?
Beat me out. Beat me out.
No discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 4-0. 5-0, so we will sign that. And that was what we had in front of us. We already did that one. Any other open topics?
So are you guys voting line item?
We're gonna-
By line item, like,
Hmm?
are you guys trying to, in past years, did we vote like general government and,
I thought we'd go through it item by item.
yeah, everything?
We have, I mean, it's up to, I mean, if you
No,
want
I
to.
don't, I just didn't remember if we had to do that.
I don't know if we're required. Charlie, are we required
If
to
you have a
go?
document and you've said, we're approving this document, then everything in it is approved.
So we have the budget and we made the adjustments that we made
Yeah,
tonight.
no, that's fine with me,
That's-
I just thought.
I'd rather do it that way than go, yeah, we don't.
No,
That was, yeah,
Yeah.
we're all good with that.
We used to
So
go
these-
department by department, but
So
I
what,
agree
so
with
on
you.
these, so I'll hand these out tonight. These are the transcriptive articles for the warrant for the special town meeting and annual. When I talked with Charlie, the approach we'd like to take is, we don't want to vote on these until they certify them tomorrow night at the Board of Selectmen meeting, just in case there's some kind of change. So we'll just have one more quick meeting before town meeting, because the recommendations aren't published in here anyway. We'll just make the recommendation on town meeting 4.
Right now, there aren't too many,
There's only one article, I think, that's finance related, right?
right
You're
now.
the bulletproof
Well,
vests,
the bulletproof
bulletproof
vest
vest.
for 15,000.
and then you have the
transfer for the ambulance.
well, we also have the sanitary sewer, we
Yeah.
have the,
Bonding articles.
we have the well, replacing the number 1 water well.
Yeah,
And we've got the bonding article for the generator for the police station, town hall complex, and repaving over at Mitchell.
yes.
That's me.
It's in this town meeting.
wasn't in here.
I don't know, I just got these.
When you say the sanitary sewer is on an article, you talking about the $9 million,
11,
11 million?
11.
And, okay. I don't know if the town knows too much about that to try to.
Well, we're
fill that-
planning on having a public forum on the 25th.
Okay.
I mean, I can tell you that Brockton did approve the intermunicipal agreement last night. We had a delegation up there at the city council, and that's, so at their end, the only thing they need to do now is have the mayor approve it. We'll need both bonding authorization, but also the special legislation to create the sewer district, which if approved at town meeting would then go up to the state legislature.
And the funding for that 11 million would come from?
3 sources. One is that we will be applying for Mass Works grants later this summer, probably something on the order of $3 million. So we're good. From that, we would have connection fees from the developers for those properties, probably about a similar amount. And then we've looked at, in terms of, it's not, if we go out obviously to bond, we're not going to spend, or we're not gonna have to repay that all instantly. So during the life of the bond, or possibly even before the bond ends, we have sufficient new tax dollars to fund the remaining cost.
So I think sorry, go ahead.
You know, it's because of the housing and the commercial developments will go in, and you could, if you wanted to talk to Paul about that, the value of those will be sufficient just by themselves, even without a state grant and without the betterment fees, to cover the principal and interest costs for the bond.
All right, so we would get tax revenue from the new properties and developments, right?
Yes.
And that would cover that. But when that house has 2 or 3 kids in it who go to the school, do we still have enough to cover that?
Which is my point about that we're going for the Mass Works and we're going for the betterment. And what I'm saying is there's several streams of money, the tax dollars being one of them, so they will have more than enough money to pay off the bonds. And as you're pointing out, not just school services, but you'll have the fire department responding to calls, police department responding to calls.
I think the hope is that you'd get some some industrial business in there too that would bring in tax dollars but not add to your schools. That be a lot of ways, hopefully, that project would bring in money.
Okay.
So my intention was to hand these out tonight because we just got them, let everyone go through them. I don't want to force any type of voting on it tonight by any stretch. And then we would make the recommendation on town meeting floor like we have in the past. If the article that's tied to any financial article was recommended by the finance committee. Plus, we don't have unfortunately, two of the four members here tonight, unfortunately. But if we want to look through them tonight, I'm happy to hand them out. We can take a quick peek through and.
Well, listen to, maybe take a quick peek.
Yeah.
So the public hearing that's happening, is that the notice that came out on the Board of Selectmen today about a development? Or is that something?
No, there's several things on it. What I'm talking about, the sanitary sewer is a public forum, it's not a
Okay.
hearing.
It's not a
So
hearing.
there's no legal basis for, we're doing it because we'd like to get the information out there. We'd like to be able to answer people's questions before a town meeting. We also have a presentation by the developer for the Chapter 40B, the 240 units, 80 condos, 160 apartments. That would be one of the things that's being developed in the district. That's scheduled, I believe, for the 21st. So we'll have that. This is me speaking, not the board. I don't see the board making any decision about saying that the town is endorsing this development at that meeting, simply because it'll be the first time they'll do the presentation. I think they'll want some input from the departments. I think they'll want input from the general public. And there's no requirement that again, this presentation is simply at a selectmen's meeting. It's not a public hearing per se. I think we're also, not a board meeting, but we'll also be talking with one of the folks who own the Compass Medical Center property, who are looking to build additional buildings there. I think they want to do an outpatient building there. They're thinking of doing a 120-person inpatient for folks with emotional and mental issues. We should be having a meeting with them about their plans sometime next week also. But the public hearings and such, for instance, for the Chapter 40B, eventually, if that continues down the road, those would be done through what's called a comprehensive permit before the Zoning Board of Appeals. They would hold the formal hearings. They would have to make the decision to formally approve the project or not. Similarly, for any of the commercial developments, and I think, for instance, Rhino Capital was, in the last few weeks, was able to get their special permit and site plan approved by the planning board during the last few weeks. But developments like that all go funneled through the planning and zoning.
Could we ask you, do you mind just coming up and walking us through the articles that? And especially, all appear to be pretty straightforward.
Skip over that. I'm not sure that we'll do anything, what we will and won't do with Article 1. We haven't begun negotiations with any of the unions yet, so we're down to what? It'll be almost 4 weeks as of yesterday. And unlikely
What are
we're
you
gonna.
doing? You get going.
So we go through the annual.
Well, wait, Article 2, didn't we just give them reserve funds for that?
Do we need to do
Oh,
both?
Sorry, for which
So there's
one?
the Article 2 for the special.
Yes.
There's the 10,000 from ambulance receipts to ambulance supplies.
Yeah, and then there's another,
What is that in addition to the reserve fund? Or did they just-
I believe so, he sent them all separately. I'll run it by him to make sure, but they were sent those articles a ways back, and then the reserve fund transfer much more recently.
But, both of us can.
That'd be good to know.
I'm emailing him right now.
The third article is different from the second.
Right.
The third one is from previous
Right.
years. Article 2 would be for the year we're in now.
All right, because then it's prior year bills for
Yeah.
what, 4,000?
We said to go to the annual or?
Article 4 is for sick leave buyback.
Right.
Right, for, we had an unexpected retirement, usually it's known ahead of time and it's budgeted in the budget. So-
Right. Any questions? We'll find out about Article 2.
What was Article 2's dollar amount, just
The 10.
10,000? It was 18 for the reserve fund transfer?
That's what we approved tonight.
Oh.
Okay, the annual.
Article 1's reports, Article 2 is the budget and setting, I think there's a very long list of the salaries for the elected officials. I think it's the moderator, the town clerk, board of selectmen, maybe some, I think that's about it. Maybe either the assessors or the health, I think get small amounts of money also. Article 3 is the capital budget. The list there shows the various funding sources. Melanie had talked to the various departments about articles that have been approved in previous years, whether we could close them out and use them to help fund the capital budget this year. I think we had about, was it 100 to 150,000?
150.
So they're doing all those without bonding.
Those ones we're doing without bonding,
Okay.
correct.
There are two we're doing with bonding.
Later on, we'll get into the yes.
Okay.
Just, it was easier, I think, keeping the bonding ones separate in terms of the language of the motions, the language of the articles, made it less complex. 4 is a traditional article to allow the selectmen to apply for and receive state grants and expend monies. 5 is to increase the property tax exemptions under those categories. 6 is the traditional list of the revolving funds, so they have to be authorized each year by the town. 7 is separate from the capital because it doesn't qualify in terms of the amount for capital, so it's a separate article outside the capital budget.
Why didn't he just present that to us?
Article 8,
Good.
the 10%.
It was just a question, as opposed to funding in the town meeting, just request it through as a reserve transfer because we have excess funds.
Yeah, it was-
Well, reserve fund, the general rule is it's unexpected or unanticipated, something like an emergency. This is something that is done periodically, I believe I think it says every 5 years. So this was a known expense coming in, and it's not a situation where, legally, if you went to town meeting, the motion could be to move the money from the reserve fund to fund this. There's nothing wrong with that. But in terms of the finance committee's own vote, as opposed to town meeting, it's a known expense. We knew that this was coming around again. There's no emergency associated with it.
Okay.
8 is to take the town out of civil service. This has already been negotiated with the 2 police unions, the superior officers and the patrol officers. But in order to make it effective, I believe we're going to need to go to get the special legislation done. First step in that is the vote that we would have here. Council's checking one more time. There was a question raised whether in fact the town had at a previous election voted to withdraw from civil service, not at town meeting, but at a town ballot election. And he's checking on that. If that's been done and we don't need this article, then we'll just pass over it, but it's there in case we do. 9 is a series of amendments, 9 is to take the constables out of the list of elected officials. They would the folks who would be elected this May would be in office for those 3 years, and then there'd be an appointed position rather than elected.
That's one of the hot topics in town, constable. We have more people, those are the only contested races we ever have.
I think actually we've got more positions than people who filed this
Really?
year. 10 is revisions for the wetlands bylaw. I know that Conservation Commission's been reviewing this with town council to get those updated. That brings us to 11, which is one of the series of annual payments that the fire department is making from ambulance receipts back to the stabilization fund since the original appropriation for the Tower 1 truck came from the stabilization fund, but the agreement was that over the years, that amount would be replenished back into stabilization. 12 is for the acceptance of Elmwood Court. The selectmen do need to have a hearing on the 25th, which they'll have on that. But we still need to go to town meeting to have the town officially vote to accept the road. 13, we have a lot of roads that are in a gray area in the sense that we would like to accept them, but the developer has walked, they're older, basically they sit there. And we can't really go in there to do proper maintenance of them, and the residents don't get the proper services. I believe it was the town of Natick got special legislation that Chris Kenny found a couple months ago that would allow a shorter, less constrictive version of the acceptance procedures, so that the town, if this was approved at town meeting, and then the state legislature approved it, that then at future town meetings, just like with Elmwood Court, we could have the streets accepted based on the subdivision plans rather than the actual as-bills. Because we don't have the money to go out and do as-bills for each of these subdivisions, or each of these roads. We would obviously go out and check to say, okay, do the plans actually resemble what would actually occur? So we don't say we're accepting somebody's property because the road ended up going through or something like that. But if the town meeting approves this, that also would be sent up to the state legislature. Then 14 is the special legislation to approve the North Bedford Street Sewer District. Again, if town meeting approved this, then it would be sent up to the state legislature. And that was written by town council. 15 is the approval for the borrowing of the $11 million for this project for the district. 16 is for replacing well 1 for the water department. The numbers from John, their intention is to bond for, I believe, a 20-year bonding. Obviously, we'll be using water department monies to pay back that bond over the years.
And this will actually be a two-phase project, right?
I think that was how it was
Right.
presented.
Because they wouldn't get it all done in 1 year, right? One this part this year, part next year.
We had 2 large projects that were originally part of the capital plan. Given the size of those, and given the length of time we would be using the generator and not having to repave those areas around the Mitchell School property, the capital committee recommended that instead of using the available funds we have right now, which would basically wipe out and not be able to do anything else this year in terms of a capital plan, that we in fact do approve those projects, but bond for those. 18 is a series of changes in the stormwater bylaw. You know, the planning board and the conservation commission have been going back and forth with town council for the last month. So it's been very thorough review by those departments along with council. And I believe that brings us to the end.
Melanie, do you have, based on what we did here tonight, do you have a bottom line number then on the budget? For,
Problem is that the report that dumps out from SoftWrite for me into Excel doesn't dump out with formulas, so I can't just make those changes real quick, but if you want to. So, we were at, see if this agrees with what you had, we were at 56,593,554. Does that agree with what you guys had?
Say that again.
56,593,554.
That's where we're at before the adjustments that
Okay,
were made
so then
tonight.
if we take out
2,
2,000 for the clerk,
17,567.50,
17,567.50, and then
Difference.
and then 20,
21, was it? 'Cause it was 75
20,
when we
20,
put it.
20,000 roughly.
$20,202.
202 and 96. Right.
What was the change in building? I had 21,000.
So the three changes would be 2,000,
2,000.
17,567.50,
Correct.
and 22,0306.
52,003,06.
Right.
So 56,553,783.44.
One more time, sorry. 56,553.
553,783.44.
I remember when it was 23 million.
Don't date yourself.
I'm just saying.
And with respect to Article 3, the amount that's listed here at 1203414 is the correct number? The last one I think we had from you was
What I sent over to you.
1052186.
This is for capital.
Yes.
That should be.
Yes, because part of that increase was the Mitchell School, that instead of doing it in 2 phases, we will be able to bond it to do it in 1 phase.
That would be
So
a separate.
Article 3 should be 1,203,414. Is that what you had?
Yeah, it's right in the warrant.
Yeah.
So what, I'm just trying to figure out quick what the change was, Mel, from the spreadsheet that you had sent out earlier, which was 105218654.
When did I send that?
40461. Library roof assessment.
Yeah, 'cause I don't think any of these amounts have changed.
40.
Was there an error maybe in the
I don't know,
formula?
in the copy somewhere, I mean, it doesn't.
Because those all matched.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if in the spreadsheet that got sent out, maybe there was an error in the formula.
When was this spreadsheet sent?
But that was last week.
Ago. or-
Yeah.
Yeah, because I asked you after the meeting, and
Yeah, it was like Tuesday or Wednesday of last week. Here it is.
$1,052,000.
Yes, ma'am.
That's what's being funded from stabilization.
Oh, and then you did the difference from.
Oh, the difference,
repurpose.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay, that's right.
Yeah, the spreadsheet I sent you last week has a couple things that aren't in Article 3. The dump truck and supervisor truck for DPW, those aren't in Article 3 because the DPW is actually funding those from their operating budget, but they went in front of capital because they were over the capital thresholds. The spreadsheet from the other day also has the generator, the well, and the Mitchell School paving, which are later articles, because those are going for bond. And I think that should be the only differences.
Still the same exact amounts, the same exact projects that don't add up to the same amount. Correct, yeah. We'll do the math again.
I'd have to.
Yeah, I mean, it just doesn't. So your spreadsheet, Mel, had a total capital of 2958363,
Yeah.
of which 1052186 and change was coming out of stabilization. That amount should match what's in Article 3, should it not? Because it's the same projects that were being funded under the stabilization line. I can't understand where the difference is, and maybe I'm being dense, but I don't see it
No, I
there.
see what you mean.
Well, there's also the repurpose funds though, right?
But
I don't have, but let me see a copy of how the warrant is worded. So you mean that the 1,058,000 should match this 1,203,000?
unless, as Dave is saying, I mean, we're accounting, we.
The reason it doesn't is because
Of
the
the repurpose funds?
1,203,000 includes the repurposed articles.
Okay, that's fine,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, because that number was like a 150.
I think it was 151,000.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. The light is now shining on Marblehead. Okay.
So we have that. So the articles that, again, we'll digest, have some time. Melanie is getting a clarification on the special town meeting, Article 2.
Yeah, I just sent that off to him.
Article 7 is the police vest, which I think we've already talked about with the chief, but we will vote on it when we have the full committee here. Obviously, we vote on the budget, Article 2. I missed one. We'll vote on Article 3.
Three,
So
four,
2, 3.
2, 3, 4, right? We
Did I
take
just-
a position on 4, I think.
Going to vote and authorize, so 4, yes.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
8, we do not. 7.
Unless you really want
I don't think 8 or 9 we need to,
to, 9 or 10,
or 10. 11 we
Yes.
do.
12, no,
13.
13.
Well, I mean, so let's talk about 13 for a second. Only because the acceptance of the roadways will increase the mileage that'll increase our Chapter 90 funding
Eventually, yes.
eventually. So we may want to, from that perspective, make a vote on
Mhm.
Article 13.
Sewer district.
Voting on that one.
Well,
The sewer, you want
I think we
the
vote on,
district or the bond?
I would think we vote on
Or
15.
both?
Okay.
What do you all?
I think that's
15,
probably
yeah.
right.
16
and 17.
and then 17,
Yep. And then 18, no.
18 no.
Okay.
So we will, what's the date that this is, are the selectmen voting on this tomorrow night?
Yes.
Okay. And the date that it's
So,
voted?
yeah, I mean, at that point, the assumption, we'll turn it over to the town clerk in the final version. Clerk then, I don't know about by the end of this week, but very early next week after Patriots Day, we'll post it in the
It
places.
doesn't need our vote to post it and stuff.
Doesn't need our vote to post it, no.
You just have to announce it at town meeting.
Yep, so, and we can discuss as a committee, if there is a public hearing on the sewer district, if we want to attend that, if anyone on the committee wants to get more information, or, so we can collaborate outside of here and, or not collaborate. I'll send you each an individual email, and then, I know, I have to watch, I use the word collaborate at work all the time, so. Any other topics for discussion or questions?
Not for me.
Okay.
For me.
I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a
Lucia.
motion.
Second.
Oh, no,
Oh.
you were gonna be the maker of the motion.
Oh, I got, motion the meeting to adjourn, make a motion for the meeting to adjourn.
There we go.
And a second by Dave. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm gonna pass these out.
We have no second.